All right, welcome everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Talk Openly, the little podcast we've been doing for Lions Roar Dharma Center for what, about a year and a half, 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
man, every Tuesday night I look forward to it, and I'm just so grateful to be here with you, Daniel. So, uh,
Same, Jack. I always learn so much, feel uplifted, supported. And there's like a certain sense of accountability
mm,
and like there's something about doing the show, talking to you, that keeps this like thread of Dharma woven through my weeks, like I know that I can count on this to sort of bring me back. So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
kind of
same
it's
here.
kind of like our little breath cycle.
It is. Yes, it
There's
is.
a pattern that we have here.
There
Yeah.
is a pattern. Yeah. Yeah, and tonight we're going to be talking about it'll be the kind of third part in our series on shamatha meditation. We've been talking about what kinds of obstacles can come up during your shamatha meditation. And the last 2 weeks, we talked about excitement and laxity. And tonight we're actually going to be talking about antidotes for both of those. And this is kind of the fun one, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
What
a
do we do about it?
yeah, what do we do about it? And there's some really interesting ones too. There's some ones that are maybe a little more obvious, and then there's some that are like, huh, that's pretty clever. So I hope you stick around, folks who are listening, and hear all of those interesting nuggets. It's good stuff.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'd love to hear, Daniel. I know you had a talk on Sunday. I'd love to hear how it went.
Well, I think it went well. I got good feedback from it. It was didn't go as I planned it though.
Uh-huh.
Or as I went a little bit off rail. From my
So for
point of view,
yeah,
from
remind us what your
from my
topic
point of view.
was.
So what it was is I was talking about sort of two things. On the one hand, I was talking about collecting all of our teachers' public talks and materials, notes, whatever, all together into sort of an AI llama library, right?
Mhm.
And I already had set something like that up, using notes from talks from a long time ago. And so the talk was partially about that project, that desire, and then also what I had learned from those old notes, right?
Mm,
And so I brought it in here, and I had one of the things in this AI tool is the generation of like a 10-minute podcast. You may have heard something like this before. And so I had this little podcast episode. So that I started off, I had my introduction, and then I said, okay, we're going to listen to this little podcast, and then we're going to have a discussion about it, and we're going to talk about all the content, all the content of the notes. So as soon as I finished the podcast, I said, "All right, well, before we go any further, let's get some feedback and let's have a conversation." And then an hour later, and I had not touched my notes, you know.
really?
Yeah, yeah. So there was a lot of questions and feedback and commentary on the podcast itself and the technology and the potential goodness and potential harmfulness and all of that, which was a great discussion. And
Yeah.
in fact, because I sort of found out about the talk late, it made it easy for me. There was a little bit of an intention there on my end to take the load off of myself by by having a little
True.
bit of engagement, get everybody in there so that people could talk instead of just listening to me, right?
Mhm.
But it worked a little too well. So I have all this material, about what Lama was saying in these talks.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't talk about any of it.
That's so funny. You're gonna have to do a part two.
I am. I'm gonna have
Let's
to
do
do
it.
part two, three, four, five. There's a lot. There's a lot of content there, and I
Yeah.
found it so beneficial myself. Like, just there. Some of it's even applicable tonight. Yeah,
Great.
yeah. So, super. The talk went well. Preparing for it was good. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad it went well. I was a little bit sort of little mad at myself, I think, for, like
Mhm.
setting it up in such a way that I didn't actually get to the meat and potatoes that I wanted to, but I think still, it was good.
Yeah.
It took us in a fine direction.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and that's kind of a fun thing when you can be a little bit more spontaneous, right? Rather than,
Yeah.
sticking to a plan. So it's just different modes, right? And
That's
it
right.
kind of comes out with different conclusions. And so now you have what could be multiple more talks on the same topic, which is great for us and maybe good for you too, because it's like you know what is coming up next.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm not
Um,
gonna. I'm over talking about the technology. I don't
yeah.
want.
Yeah.
I'm good. That's fine. Okay, I've said my piece about that. Everybody knows I'm into tech and
Yeah.
I like AI stuff, except that whatever. Anyway, everybody gets that part. I want to focus on the Dharma.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
next. That's exciting.
Exactly, exactly. So that was really good. I got a lot of good feedback. And yeah, a lot of encouragement. It was kind of fun, Jack. One of the things that was kind of neat about it was before I like within like let's say the hour or two before I gave the talk, I got a number of text messages from people saying like, "Hey, I'm gonna be there. Looking forward to what you're saying. You're gonna do great." Or "I'm not gonna be there, but I know you're gonna do great."
Yeah.
It was really sweet. It was nice. I felt very supported.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
And I gotta say, so we've heard our teacher say that he doesn't want Lions Roar Dharma Center to become a Dharma club, right? We're
That's
supposed to
great.
be more open and engaged with the community and all of that. But the podcast presenters, the AI podcast presenters, they used a phrase that I liked a lot. They said, "Oh, it's a Dharma home,"
A
and
Dharma
and I was
home.
like, that's right. That's what that feels like. You know?
Wow. I
Yeah.
like that.
So
Oh,
so I got
cool.
to experience hanging out at home with my
Yeah.
friends and family and having a good conversation.
That really relieves a lot of the pressure, right? Like if
Oh yeah.
we're just hanging out at home, yeah, no big
That's right.
deal.
No big deal. It's all good. Yeah.
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 Awesome.
So
Good
yeah,
work.
that was a big part of my week was sort of preparing for that and getting ready for it. And I thought it really did influence my practice, and I could see how it wormed its way into my mind and into my mind training and my meditation practice both.
Yeah. Okay. What'd you notice? What kind of things?
Well, so there was some meditation instruction that I'll I'll read it right now. It
Sure.
is
Yeah, that'd be
appropriate. It's
great.
appropriate for tonight. I was thinking I might share it a little bit later, but since you asked, I'm actually just going to read, if it's okay with you, a quote from the notes here that really kind of struck me. Okay, so maybe there's nothing new for you here, but I felt like it was important for me to hear this. So the notes, I assume this is, Lama Jimpa talking, and it says, and it's very important that when you start your meditation, when you sit down to train, you be assertive. You
Oh.
need to really think about what you want to do, what you're about to do. That way, your practice will be energized, be focused, and have intention. If we sit and are vague and think, I don't know, that's not what we want. You must be assertive, decisive. When you're on a freeway, you have to pick a lane.
Mm.
And I really appreciated that. That was the first part of the quote that I really appreciated. And then it says, now there are different styles of shamatha. In the West, it's common to use the breath to focus on and count breaths in a cycle. In the Vajrayana tradition, it's common to first count 21 breaths and
Mm.
then bring forth the object of visualization. The idea is you have to cut off discursive thought, then you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Cool.
So
Mm-hmm.
the part that I like that little last part, the 21 breaths and then move on, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was cool. I actually had not heard that. I've heard like do some shamatha and then, some breath, whatever,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
move into visualization. I've heard that. I hadn't heard that specific technique, and I've been using it since I learned it, and I thought that was
Okay.
helpful. And
What do you
also that
notice? Can I ask what you notice when you do that, the 21, and then go on to the rest of the practice?
yeah. Well, what I notice is that in fact I am starting my visualization practice with a greater intention
Mm,
around it, and that indeed a decent amount, if I do the full 21 breaths where I'm really actually paying attention and I'm not losing my count, by the end of it, in fact, the whole chatter has calmed down quite a lot, and now it's easier to focus on visualization. I'm
okay.
not a I'm I actually don't I have not practiced a lot of shamatha with, visualization, and so
Mhm.
that's my intention now is to bring that in because Vajrayana is an incredibly visual tradition,
Yeah.
and so I'd like to I usually use my breath, right, for shamatha meditation. Sometimes I'll do mantra. Both of those relatively easy for me, so now I have to move on to something a bit more challenging, which is the visualization,
There
and
you go.
yeah, we'll talk about a little bit of that more tonight.
Cool. Okay.
But yeah, good. It's good stuff. There's all kinds of helpful pointers in those old talks. I want, I'm gonna use this opportunity to give a little shout out.
Mhm.
So Lions Roar Dharma Center has about 8 years worth of public talks by Lama Jimpa and by students. Those talks are all on YouTube, on Lions Roar Dharma Center YouTube, or on SoundCloud. And I intend to bring those into my project, my little llama library, but it's there right now, and you can access all like a fantastic treasure trove of all kinds of information. I mean, these little nuggets that I pulled out while I was, getting ready for my talk, they were so helpful. And that was just based upon notes from a talk from a long time ago, right? And that was helpful, let alone being able to like listen to the full on talk. You'll definitely
Yeah.
find some nuggets.
That's fantastic. Cool. Thank you so much for reminding us about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm.
hmm What about you, Jack? What have you been up to in the last week?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I feel a little bit like intense today. I had just like a long day at work. It was back-to-back clients, therapy clients, and with very little break in between. And so what I'm noticing is that I would say in my training, like my on the cushion training, meditation, I am feeling a little bit more engaged. I'm, a little bit more present, kind of coming back to my focus, not quite as, distracted by excitement. Um, but then when I'm out, like kind of post meditation, so in my everyday life, my practice, I feel disconnected from the practice, from the study. Um, and it's just for the simple fact that I'm so busy when I'm at work, and
Yeah.
it's intense work, and so it occupies a lot of my brain space. Um, and so I want to find some kind of way to remind myself, uh, whenever I have like a pocket of time, like, oh hey, like check in, where is mind right now? Check in with like, okay, where is the self right now? Like, what is that thing that,
Yeah.
supposed to be reflecting on and that's causing me so much difficulty? Oh yeah, impermanence, right. All of these things in front of me, myself, I'm changing. Those little reminders throughout the day are so helpful for me, just to kind of stay with, you know, the practice. And I know I mentioned it maybe a couple times ago, that I had received some instruction from Lama, to, really, really, as best as I can, keep my study in mind all the time. Like
Yeah.
that I really, cannot lose focus on that. And that
That's mind training.
that's mind training. It is, yeah. Um, and it's so interesting because, I feel like this kind of pressure, right? That like, oh, well, if I do that, then like, how am I going to get all this work done, right? Like if I'm thinking about the Dharma all the time, right? And
Yeah.
but there's so many ways, like when I'm really kind of with that practice of bringing it to mind, having it present with me, as often as I can, then it's flowing. It's like I can do my therapy practice and be thinking like, where is mind right now?
Yeah.
And reminding myself, oh, like what would honestly, sometimes I'll think, what would Llama do
Mm.
in this
Hmm.
situation, right? Like, how would he be holding himself? Like, what would he be, kind of projecting to the client? And I just feel this kind of immediate centering and like, oh yeah, bodhicitta, no matter what,
Yeah.
bodhicitta. And then I feel this kind of like, um, yeah, warmth and energy towards people.
Yeah.
And so instead of what my like, you know, mistaken self is saying, right? That mistaken self is saying, "Oh, you gotta like, no, just drop that because it's gonna take away from, your work and like you're too busy for that."
Mm.
Um, Instead of that, like, which actually drives me to feel more exhausted, more burnt out, right? When I do have the Dharma present with me all day, I feel energized. I feel
Right.
peaceful. I feel better at my work, right? Like I'm more engaged, I'm more in contact with people. When I offer feedback or kind of like, "Hey, did I hear that
Mm.
right?" That's it, yes, it's better. Like people are giving, I can see the effects, right?
Yeah.
Um and so I just, need to remind myself of that, like that to help motivate me, like, okay, yes, it feels like a hard day, but this is actually what works, right? Um, so yeah, that's a little bit of what I'm working with, what I'd like to be kind of weaving into
Yeah.
my everyday training. Yeah.
You made me think of something. So you spend a lot of time talking to and listening to people, right?
Mhm.
So I have this had this problem throughout my life of, appearing to be engaged and interested in people, but it's actually my discursive thought is going crazy and I'm thinking about what they're saying. I'm not listening really. I'm just hearing what they're saying so I can respond to it, and I'm thinking all kinds of stuff. And I know that that's not helpful and cuts me off, disconnects me from the person.
Mm,
And so, what one experience that I've had repeatedly is one of, where I'm like, oh, what should I be doing with my mind right now? I recognize that I'm actually not connected here, and I
mm,
notice this crazy discursive thought going on. This habitual tendency, and then I'll be like, I'm gonna do Tonglen with them, right? And in the beginning, I had that thought that you mentioned, which is,
mm,
but if you're doing Tonglen, then you're really not listening, right? I'll be so distracted by the practice that I really won't be paying attention. But I've tested this theory numerous times now, and it turns out that my hypothesis is incorrect.
yeah.
Um, and that if I do Tonglen practice while I'm listening to a person tell me about whatever their situation is, and if I do it, it does what you said. It warms me up. It makes me so like sickeningly present with the person, right? Like, because
Mm.
I'm not just connected to their words. I'm like visually connected with them because really like I'm looking at them, you know? And I'm so like because I'm like engaged in this way, but I'm not thinking so much, right? It's just this flow, this breathing in and breathing out, breathing in and breathing out, sending and receiving, sending and receiving. It connects me with the other person in this way that is like damn near magical, you know?
Mm,
Like
mm,
where I feel I'm like, wow, that's really crazy. I'm not sitting here trying to remember what they're saying. I'm not trying to think of a response, but I am really hearing them. Like, I really get what's going on here. It's a beautiful experience, and what you're saying kind of reminds me of that, like this, like how do we bring this in? And it turns out like our practice in real life, there's no separation there,
yeah.
right? So
Right,
it's
right.
all Dharma, right? That's sort of the point.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
we do have to remember what we're doing and have some intentionality around it.
For sure, definitely. Yeah. Well, and that connects to what you were saying earlier, what Lama said about sitting down for meditation. You do have to be intentional. You have to be
Yeah,
assertive. And
right,
so I do think that that's a part of it too, is like, okay, yes, I'm doing this I'm doing my Dharma training and I'm also paying it. I am doing like, I'm not just meditating, right? I'm
right.
engaged with with my world around me while I'm also reflecting on these trainings.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really cool.
Did you do any? I'm curious to hear. Did you ever try intentionally exciting yourself or exciting or
Oh
intentionally
my gosh,
dulling?
I didn't. No, I'm so sorry.
No,
Yeah.
no, I was just curious. I was curious because I think that that's one of the fascinating things about meditation is this it surrounds motivation. It surrounds our intention. What are we doing? Like if we know what we're doing and we know that we're doing it and we're watching ourselves doing it, right? That's
Mm,
meditation right there, right?
yeah.
Like you know what you intended to do, you know what you're doing and you're watching, you're there, you're present.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that I hadn't thought about it since last week. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
it
I
just
get it. I
dropped
know
out
how
of my
that
mind.
goes.
But I still really want to try that. In part because I felt like the last time I did that, um, I just got a lot out of it. A lot of
Oh yeah.
insight, kind of like, um,
Yeah.
oh gosh, why is it that when I tell myself to get excited, I then like relax?
Why is it when I tell myself I'm going to be bored, I'm really going to be bored, I have
Yeah.
the most fascinating meditation I've ever had?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. So try it. Yeah, for folks listening, try that out. It's kind of fun. And see what your mind does.
Hmm.
But yeah, for the most part, things are going. Yeah, I read Calming the Mind every day. We'll be talking a lot about calming the mind, Ginlan Rinpa, when we get to our topic for tonight. But yeah, how do you feel about doing some Lojong?
Let's do it. Let me share my screen and we'll hop on over to the RLS. What is it? Random Lojong
Random
slogan
Lojong.
generator. There we go. G.
Yeah.
All right. Let's check it out. What's it got in store for us today?
Hmm.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, an important one, huh?
Yeah.
Number 56. Don't expect gratitude. So let's check it
Hmm.
out. Generally speaking, when we are too desirous of something in life, we're less likely to attain it. Success seems to increase in direct proportion to the diminution of our desires. The same logic applies to our need for recognition. We might want to be appreciated and respected, but we have only a limited ability to influence how other people respond. And we can't make somebody show us gratitude any more than we can force someone to love us. That was Charlie Kebgon
Hmm.
in his book on Lojong. This
But
one,
I'm working so hard and I'm so compassionate and I'm so mindful and I've been such a good person. Why are people not clapping me on the back and telling me I'm a Buddha?
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, let's take it down to like everyday life, right? Like I put your dish in the sink, or I
Yeah,
take your dish out of the sink and
yeah,
put it in the
yeah.
dishwasher every day. Like, why don't you tell me thank you?
That's
You know?
right.
Or like, why don't you put my dish into the dishwasher, right?
This is oddly specific, but yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Well, yeah, so it's like that kind of that idea that like, okay, so I do something good, so then I deserve something in return, which is, it's very transactional, but it's
Yeah,
kind of how we see the world. It's like, well, I put out energy, I put out effort, so like I should get something back, right? Like I
right.
paid for this.
Yeah.
And it's just not how it works, and I think that really fuels a lot of disappointment. It fuels uh, a lot of burnout and yeah, because people aren't going to notice every little thing that we do. So if we're expecting that, it's going to be a real big disappointment.
Oh man. Yeah, yeah, for sure it's gonna be. But here's the thing. Look at the first part, which I think is like kind of critical here, right?
Mhm.
That if we want something too much, we're not really gonna get it, right?
Mm,
And I'm
yeah,
gonna just repeat that second sentence. Success seems to increase in direct proportion to the diminution of our desires,
yeah.
right? So like that's just it. Once you start to let go of the outcome so much and not be so attached to the outcome, you can focus on the action, doing the right actions. And if you do the right actions, you're going to get some good results, right? But
Yeah.
don't worry about the results. Like they'll
Right.
come, they'll come. I remember, I think this is like one of those like hermeneutic principles, right? Which is it goes something like you're entitled to your action, but not to the outcome.
Ah,
And I feel like this is sort of in a similar vein where it's like yeah, maybe there will be gratitude, maybe there won't, but if you're expecting it and looking for it, you're never gonna
it's
appreciate it.
not gonna come.
Even if it comes, you might be sort of suspicious of it
Right.
or you
Yeah.
might even get somebody who says thank you and you're like, you don't really mean that.
Right. Oh, wow. Okay. So that expecting gratitude kind of increases rather than, increases what we actually want, it increases the opposite. That real
Hmm.
strong desire for gratitude. Oh,
Exactly,
wow.
exactly,
Yeah.
right. So this is Atisha's seventh point in Atisha's seven mind training points. I have them framed. I showed you, a friend of mine gave me this little framed Lojong slogans, the first seven of Atisha's points there. And this is point number seven, and it's the one that is for tomorrow. So it's kind of funny that I'm just doing it every day, like part of my meditation.
Oh,
I
okay.
meditate on one of those seven. And so it's just kind of funny because this exact same one is coming up for me tomorrow. So I wonder what that means.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Well, where do you see it? Where do you see it show?
Well, you know what okay, I'm not into astrology, but it is kind of funny. I'm a Leo, right?
Hmm.
And people say that there's this need among Leos to have people express gratitude. Like it is in fact this sort of dominant character trait, which I think is funny. Like I don't know, but it's there. It's definitely there. I mean, maybe it's just the same as it is for everybody else, but this is a strong one for me where I'll go and I'll do all kinds of things, right, that I think are for someone else's benefit, and they don't even recognize it. They don't even notice it, let alone say thank you. And they may even be sort of like, well, you did that, but why didn't you do this other thing over here, you know?
Exactly.
And that just it really sets me off. So I think that this is one of those points that I have to actually come back to again and again and sit with and realize like I don't have to be looking for external validation, right? In fact, Jack, that's my problem, right?
Hmm.
Is that I look too much for things outside of me to validate and reinforce some, like my experience or my beliefs or whatever, when in fact I could do with a little bit more sort of like internal assurance, if you will, some
Yeah.
confidence.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that confidence does come from like practicing, good kind of ethical conduct. And so just like continuing with that, humbly moving forward, just kind of like doing the things that we've been taught to do. And when some kind of kindness comes our way because of it, wow, that's really nice, but not thinking that we'll just get it.
Yeah,
Yeah, thanks. This is a good one. What do you
it
see?
is.
What's this picture?
This is Bodhisattva Padmapani.
Hmm.
It's kind of dark and faded, but I like it. Simple. It's not
Mm-hmm.
so ornate. Yeah.
I'm not familiar with there's so many different
Yeah.
beings, right?
Yeah. I
There's
have
such
no.
a universe, right? Of
Right. Imagine just seeing every being for which we have a Tonka or a Tonka has been created. I mean, right? That'd be a pantheon.
yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, my friend,
Well, shall we talk about some antidotes?
talk about some antidotes. Yeah. Antidotes. which I need constantly in meditation. I am not yet to the stage of shamatha meditation where my potential obstacle is non-application of or application of antidotes.
Right. At some point we'll get there, hopefully.
Yeah. So at some point, when you've progressed far enough in single pointed meditation, shamatha, you'll get to the point where you actually don't need to apply any antidotes. But because, over the course of your training, you've gotten used to applying antidotes, you might be at risk for applying an antidote when you don't actually need one. And so that's considered the fault of application. The antidote for that is non-application, but I feel like for you and
Yeah.
me right now, we are definitely not at that stage, right?
Not at all. Not at all. I'm always off balance, right? And so I'm constantly teeter-tottering one way or the other. As we've talked about, I tend towards laxity, dullness, sluggishness, depression, that aspect
Right.
of it. So there's a constant need to apply antidotes and
Yeah.
forgetting to do so.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, and I definitely tend towards the excitement, distraction, scattering, anxiety, planning, all of that. And same thing where I've got to be thinking, constantly about the antidotes and how to bring myself back to balance. So we're going to talk about that. I'm excited.
Maybe we could just do like a Vulcan mind meld or something,
I
right?
know.
And then we'd be balanced. Your excitement, my laxity, be all balanced out.
Yeah. Hey, maybe someday, who knows?
Someday.
Might be
Ah, yeah,
able
you don't
to.
want that, Jack. Stay away. You don't want none of that.
Yeah, I don't know if I mean that's the thing is that I think being inside someone's skin, you'd probably be like, whoa, anyone, right?
Yeah, yeah, no thank you.
Yep, yep.
One was enough.
Right, right. Okay, so in shamatha, we've been talking, yeah, about laxity and excitement. And these are really the obstacles that are kind of gonna be present for you up until like the very last stages of shamatha, last few stages. Um, And the overarching antidotes, we're going to get into some of the more detailed kind of application of antidotes in a little bit, but the overarching ones are one, mindfulness. So Ginlam Rinpa says that mindfulness is really the ability to maintain continuity of awareness of the object. And then vigilance. So that's this kind of like mental faculty of guarding or watching over the meditative process itself to see if distraction has occurred. And so those are kind of the two main ones that are necessary for working with both laxity and excitement, not just one or the other. And I'm curious what you think about that kind of both mindfulness and vigilance balance that we're working on in kind of the earlier stages of shamatha.
Yeah, it's interesting to try to distinguish between them, right?
Mhm.
I was thinking about that ahead of the show. I thought, like, can I sort of qualitatively assert, like, yes, there is mindfulness, and there is vigilance. It's
Right.
interesting to me that vigilance, I feel like, is running in the background.
Mm,
It doesn't, I don't feel like, and maybe this is a problem for me, but I don't feel like vigilance it's sort of just like an operation that's constantly there. It's just
mm,
like sort of I don't know how to describe it. It just is awareness of the quality of the meditation, and an awareness when I'm not being mindful. So, mindfulness to me is like, so let's say I'm doing a breath meditation. It's the it's the awareness of my breath, right? And the clarity of that, how well connected I am to it, right? So like when I do, for example, the 21 breaths before visualization that I was talking about earlier, one of the things that I find is really interesting there is that I can maintain my awareness. I can count, like when I first started, I couldn't even do like 3 breaths without
yeah.
losing. without losing my count, right? So it's kind of neat. I'm like, oh, okay, I can get to, no, because no problem getting to 21 breaths. And I recognize I'm not just like aware of the count, I'm literally aware of my breath. But what's fascinating is watching how mindful I am. So
Mm,
in some cases, it's
mhm,
this like it's almost like hyper mindfulness, right? Like where every last little detail is like kind of crunched down almost, right? And it's just sort of hyper focused on the object. And then in other cases, it's this very dull sort
mhm,
of like I can see it or I'm aware of it, but it's kind of like faded or kind of like yeah, I can feel it there, I'm breathing or whatever, but I'm not connected to like the full breath cycle, something
mhm,
like that. So like
mhm.
the mindfulness aspect of it to me is a little bit clearer, it's a little easier to see. The vigilance part of it feels to me like not something that I am actually like turning on or off. It's just this sort of background operation.
Mm.
What do you think?
Yeah, so I kind of think of the vigilance part as being kind of like the meta, like the kind of abstracted process in meditation where you're actually thinking about the meditation itself. And, you've kind of described this a little bit too, but you're looking at the quality of your awareness, and also recognizing like, hey, like, have I been getting distracted? Have I been getting tired? What can I be doing to bring myself, back to mindfulness? And so it's just kind of a process of I think introspection on the meditation itself.
Does it
Which
ever get confused, Jack, with like discursive thinking where you're thinking about the
Oh
meditation?
yeah. Well, and I wonder really what the difference is.
Mhm.
And maybe for very skilled meditators, um, they'd be able to parse that out a little bit better. For me, I guess I know, um, and this is important because Ginlam Rinpa does talk about, in you do want to really kind of work on vigilance in the beginning stages, but you also don't want to be overly vigilant because that's going to mean that mindfulness is going to fall apart actually, because we're not actually paying attention to the object that we've chosen. And so vigilance is kind of like, it's like you said, it's got to be running in the background all the time. And so um, I think there's just going to be ways that every single person has to, feel out like what is an appropriate level of vigilance. Like for me, it's kind of like there is some way that it's continuous, but then there's times where I have to bring in a little bit more intention and think, okay, wait a minute here. How is this going? Like how are we doing here, right? And to have a little more intention with vigilance.
Yeah.
And then there's other times where it's kind of, especially if I feel pretty focused on my object, where I want to just really stay with that mindfulness, and not feel like I have to check up on it. I think
Hmm.
especially because I don't usually have a lot of mindfulness, that when it is there, I really just want to experience that. And so I'm not kind of like, hey, how's it going? I don't know if that, yeah, if that makes sense.
No, no, that
That's the,
totally, I get it. Yeah, it resonates for sure.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, it's interesting. And I would really love to hear from, I'm gonna ask Lama what his kind of experience with vigilance is, and just see, if he feels it's different from what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'd be curious if you do talk to him. I'd be one of the things that I'm curious about vigilance is how much of how vigilance might appear with discursive thought, right? So like,
Mhm, mhm,
oh, I notice that I'm distracted. I can see that I'm going to bring myself. What's my intention? Oh, I'm bringing myself back. Okay, and so I might actually those thoughts might occur as word thoughts, right?
Yeah.
But then there's this other aspect of it where I'm just, like I sort of like there's no words there. I just recognize, I just see.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Like there's no, it's like not, it's not conceptual in nature. It's just this like, I know, I mean, I know,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like,
It's operating, but it's not like some kind of conscious, like active, you're deliberately thinking with about it. Yeah.
right, right. Yeah. I mean, like, for example, there are any number of times in a given meditation where I'll correct and there isn't a thought about it,
Mm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm off of my object or I'm a little bit lax, right? And it's not even a thought. It just is like a choop.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I think that is what, yeah, what we're working towards is like
Yeah, I just am
being
curious
natural
about.
with it, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm just kind of curious about that aspect of it. Like how much of vigilance might present in sort of thought form versus non-conceptual thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's really, it's interesting. Yeah, we should keep, maybe that's something that we can continue to work with in our meditation. We
Yeah,
can
let's watch it.
talking about it. Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, cool. And then, as always, like, I think keeping in mind with vigilance or, anything that we're doing is the like not too tight, not too loose, right? So maybe that's part of vigilance is that, okay, um, knowing when I need to be a little bit more kind of deliberate with it and when I can loosen up.
I like this story, about the Buddha talking to the student who was complaining he was been working so hard. He'd worked so hard. Oh my God, like he was like dedicating his whole life to meditation
Mm.
and he just couldn't, there were no signs of progress and he went and complained about it and the Buddha is just like, hey, you used to play the lute, right? Like a stringed instrument. And then he asked him, like, what's it like if your strings are too tight? What's it like if your strings are too loose? And then, you want it not too tight, not too loose. I think that's the origin of that particular phrase. But what I like about it is how, if you're a musician, even if you're not a musician, you could without any words, you could tell, right? That there's something's not quite right. That does not,
Yeah.
I don't even know music, right, Jack? Like I can't play a guitar, but I could tell you if the guitar's out of tune.
Yeah. For
Right?
sure. For
And so
sure.
it feels the same way with meditation in some sense, where this, you said it earlier, like it's a personal, like only you will know if you're in balance. There isn't somebody outside of you who's like, oh yeah, that your meditation is totally 100% balanced. Only you can tell, right? And then if you're a little off balance, there are these antidotes that you can apply to get yourself into balance. But like what I like is this the question like what is it that we're training to? Like how do we know when like when it sounds right? When it's
Mhm.
in balance. And I think that that's where we recognize that imbalance not needing antidote is when it's things are clear and easy and there's this kind of like sharp but relaxed, focused but
Yeah.
spacious presence, right? And
There's clarity,
it feels like
right?
balance.
Yeah. And there's both clarity and stability,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
And in the first stages, we really want to be focusing on stability, just staying, right? Just staying with the object, mindfulness, right? And
Yeah.
then honing in on clarity. So clarity of the object that we're focusing on itself, and also clarity of our mind. Um, and maybe we could get in a little bit to some of the more detailed
Yeah, let's do it.
things. And you know, laxity and excitement are kind of one side of the same coin. They're a big distraction, right? And so there's some strategies that are helpful for both of them. Like, having good posture, like there's kind of the like 7 point posture, right? That is suggested. Doing some breath work, calming the mind, stabilizing the mind with breath. Um,
If you're doing any kind of breath meditation or breath work, one thing I want to point out is something that I discovered in those notes from way back when.
yeah.
I saw a note that said, if you're doing breath meditation and you're not doing diaphragmatic breathing, you're screwed.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah, so making sure to go all the way.
Make sure,
Yeah,
like, and then I think that this is like really, really critical. It's so
yeah,
important, right? It's not just about the posture. The posture is such to allow the maximum extension of your lungs, right? And it's
right.
diaphragmatic, your belly's moving, and it's,
Yep,
and it's like really sucking in all that air. Anyway,
yeah,
I thought that was something that I really enjoyed reading was this, like,
that's a good
if you're
one.
not doing diaphragmatic breathing, you're screwed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Otherwise, yeah, you're just kind of in panic breathing all the time, right? Yeah, another one that I find really helpful for both laxity and excitement is centering in my motivation. So, starting every meditation practice with kind of, why am I here, right? What is this training about? What is this study about? Taking refuge and what I have, direct experience and evidence that really works, right? That this practice really works, that all of the teachings have made my life and the people who I can influence better, right? And so centering in, like, okay, this is all about this altruistic intention, and that's what I'm going to be doing this for. Because sometimes, at least for me, I don't know about you, but like meditation itself can feel a little bit abstracted, like abstract compared to the kind of trainings on bodhicitta, right? And compassion and loving kindness. Um, Whereas sometimes I'm like, huh, how does this connect? Does that ever happen for you?
Oh, interesting. What came to my mind when you said that was um bodhicitta is oftentimes is thought of as an antidote to lethargy and depression,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I've noticed in my own case is this. So I one of the reasons I like that quote that I read at the beginning about intention and motivation is that I sometimes miss that critical part. Sometimes
Yeah.
I sit down, I take refuge, sort of, formulaically or rote, and then I just like, no, no, I'm meditating, right? And it's not the right way to do it
Yeah,
at
totally.
all, right? Having some intention is really important. But my point is this, that a lot of times I'll get into this sort of like more subtle lethargy, right? Where easy to confuse it with sort of calm abiding and concentration. And what I notice is that I can kind of sense that what I'm going for is I'm trying to do something for my own benefit. I like the comfort. I like that super calm. I like that sort of like
Mm.
almost slightly spaced out kind of way of being. But that's me and my attachment. That's more of Daniel.
Yeah.
That's more of the problem, right? And so if
Mm.
I notice that, then remembering, right, actually, I'm trying to wake up for the benefit of all beings, right? And then what happens is there's this sort of cascading sort of reflection, if you will. Sometimes I mean, it may be just a few milliseconds, right? Of recognition of like, all right, like, oof, we're all suffering here. And
Mhm.
I don't want just this temporary, peaceful, kind of spaced out state. Like
Yeah.
that, like that's nothing, like I like that. Don't get me wrong. I like it. But that's not what I'm doing. That's not what I'm training towards, you
Yeah.
know? And so bringing in some bodhicitta, this like remembering, like what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Oh, right, because the whole world is on freaking fire, right? And people are in pain, and they need me, and they need me now,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's great. So you use one of those, like the analytical kind of, where just this quick, like, oh yeah, bodhicitta. Right. Suffering. Oh, okay.
Right, right. You
Come
you know
back.
the
Come
image that
back.
comes to my mind. This is a classic, but every single time it gets me. I remember I can see my child who is in a fast flowing river being carried towards a waterfall,
Ah,
and I am running alongside. My arms are tied, and I can't do anything. Right.
ah,
And what happens is that that particular image for some reason stuck with me. And so what'll happen is I'll be like, "Oh, right. I'm in this sort of lax state. And oh right, bodhicitta, that's what I'm doing here. Remember why I'm here. What am I
Yeah.
doing?" And that image will like flash before me. And all of a sudden I'm like, whoop, I'm here. Okay. Right.
Yeah,
Wake up.
right, right. Because that is what we're doing, right? Like it
Right.
is like if what our teachers are saying is true, like we really are in that river rushing towards a waterfall. Like we've got to liberate ourselves, right? From
That's right.
samsara. And
And not ourselves alone.
yes, yeah,
Right? Like, that's the one thing, like, "Oh, I am doing it. I'm so holy, and I'm so good, and I'm practicing dharma, and I'm a Buddhist, and, oh, look at me, I'm meditating, it's all
yeah,
good." That's okay. It's kinda small scope, though, right?
hmm
And
hmm
in that sense, it's a bit of a failure, right?
yeah,
"Okay, alright, that's nice. You got a little reprieve. Now,
yeah,
come on.
yeah. But
Let's go on
everyone's
to"
in the river here.
everyone. This isn't
Let's
just
get
about
up.
you,
Yeah,
right?
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Some other kind of quick ones for excitement. I've noticed that it's really helpful for me to do some shorter sessions. So if I have just like, okay, if I do 6 minutes and I can really just like focus my mind for 6 minutes, that's great. And so sometimes I'll break up the 24 by having a bell ring every 6 minutes.
Yeah. Yep.
That really helps me stay on track. So that's
Super
a good thing to
helpful.
try.
Yeah.
Mama's even told me like hold a river rock, like go down to the river,
Yeah.
get a big heavy rock and just
Yeah.
sit that in your hands on your lap. Like, and another thing that he told me too is like imagining a root going all the way like through your butt down
Yep.
to the ground and you're literally rooted into the
That's
ground.
right.
So you can
Yeah.
use these kind of strategies that
Yeah.
are very either kind of material or like this visualization of heaviness being
Yeah.
rooted to just depress the mind a little bit,
Oh
right?
my god, and the mountain meditation. The
Yes,
mount
tell us
like,
about that.
I
Yeah.
remember Susan Farrar, leading us in a at some point at the temple in a mountain meditation, and it was exactly as you sort of were describing. It was this incredibly centered, incredibly stable, very present sort of experience. I really enjoyed that a lot, right? And it does
Yeah.
involve some visualization. You are the mountain, and then
Yeah.
you witness the flowing of the breath, and you realize, oh, the mountain is stable, but there is movement, snow, rain and water and wind, and there's things happening. There is activity, just like there is activity in the mind, but there's also this incredibly stable, still, calm presence there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that one. Yeah, and I think for laxity too, you can even do that kind of meditation and to lift the mind rather than being like a heavy, heavy mountain. You can imagine being up at the top of the mountain, like kind of
Yeah,
being up, right? Like
yeah.
in the clouds. That clarity, right, of being on top of a mountain.
Mm.
And this, I love this visualization that Ginlam Rinpa suggests when someone's experiencing lethargy or laxity, is imagining that you're meditating on top of a telephone pole.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you're what do you have to do to stay balanced on top of a telephone pole?
that's
You're
right.
not you're not going to be drifting off, right?
I remember my dad telling me something similar. He is,
Hmm.
as far as I'm aware, not a meditator, but what he said to me was, "Well, when you're meditating, what you want to do is imagine that you're sitting on a wall that's really, really tall. It's like a mile up, right? Like super high up, and it's just a little wall, just enough wall for your butt."
Mm.
And if you tip too far forward, you're gonna fall forward. You tip too far back, you're gonna fall back. You're gonna be dead. Like, just imagine that, like sitting there. The
Yeah.
same kind of thing. And I just am sort of laughing now, remembering that my dad, of all people, gave me meditation instruction.
Wow, and what a good one too.
It is a good one. I've used it a few times. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Another suggestion too for lethargy is like imagining your body like completely full of light.
Yeah.
like just this kind of like brightness inside of you, like this kind of energetic, experience. And then you can also too like look at something bright. So Ginla Rinpa and Lama Jinpa both recommend like go outside, like look at the horizon, look at the sky, and
Right.
just feel that connection with the expanse, right? That there's this like ever
Yeah.
expanding, sky that we can gaze into and become part of, right? And so that can really lift the mind and bring some clarity as well.
Also,
Yeah.
we're talking about antidotes, but I think it's important to mention that there are also preventatives.
Sure. Yes.
Right? So like
Yeah.
one of the things that's problematic for me sometimes is I like dark, I like dim. I generally, would prefer that when meditating, but because I tend towards laxity and dullness, it's actually kind of important for me to flip the light on, right?
Yeah.
So that there is light there, so that I don't kind of go into this comfortable little sort of like, oh, I'm kind of
Like
half
in my cozy cave.
yeah, exactly. No, no, turn the light on. I oftentimes if it's cold, I'll and make sure that I don't put on something too warm. Like,
Yeah.
we want to be comfortable. Nobody has to suffer here. But it's
Yeah.
it's about finding that balance for you, you know?
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like setting yourself up for success rather than failure, right?
Right.
Or just
Make
setting
sure that
yourself
you
up
have
for, yeah. Go
make
ahead.
sure that you've slept, and make sure that you're hydrated, make
Yeah.
sure that you're not hungry,
Right.
like
These
take
are
care
good
of
things.
yourself that it's really important to have a supportive body, supportive environment for your meditation.
Yeah.
So in that
Yeah.
sense you can prevent a lot of the problems just by taking care of yourself and your environment, right?
Right.
If you
Right.
have a bunch of crap in your room, right, and the floor's dirty, trust
Yeah.
me, if you've got dog hair floating or cat hair, floating around,
Yep.
sweep that shit up.
Right.
Sweep it up, and while
Right.
you're sweeping it, think to yourself, I am cleaning the clutter of my mind, right?
Right.
I clean
Yes.
it all up, right? Like give yourself all of the right conditions. And then
Yeah.
once you're in those right conditions, it's all set. It'll be a lot easier. You'll notice, oh, I'm a little bit lax. Oh, I'm a little excited. And you'll apply these antidotes and you'll be perfectly balanced, just like Jack and I will be.
I love this encouragement. This is good. And that's the thing too, is that like we can do this, we really can. Our teachers believe in us, and I believe in them. So, I think that I have a chance, and I think you have a chance too, Dan. We
Yeah.
can do this. We can achieve shamatha.
I've
But
never met a human being who couldn't.
yeah, no, right. That's right. And like even if it takes lifetimes, right? Which, I imagine in my case this time,
Sure.
it probably will take lifetimes. But
Hopefully they're human lifetimes, Jack.
yes, yes, because we want to be able to continue this training. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely want that precious human life. Daniel, this has been really fun.
It has
I
been fun.
appreciate you.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, and folks listening, thank you. I hope this was useful. Yeah, if you get a chance to donate even just a few bucks to lionsroaddharmacenter.org, there's a donate button. We'd super appreciate it. It helps us keep our programming going and spreading the Dharma.
Also, if you are in Sacramento, and you're listening to this live or anytime around let's see here, the end of October 2024, get your butt over to the Dharma Center because Geshe Sewang is there from the Nagari Institute in Ladakh, India. And he and some fellow monks are creating a Medicine Buddha sand mandala, and there's all kinds of instruction and ceremonies, and there's so much going on. Get this, Jack.
Mm,
Tomorrow at beginning meditation, Geshe-la is going to be teaching shamatha.
I heard that. That's so
I
amazing.
know, right?
I wish
Right.
I could be there.
Yeah, yeah. And it
Ah,
sucks. I don't think I'm going to get to be there either.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But
But
anyway,
yeah,
shout
this
out to
time
Geshe-la.
around, that's okay. We'll have to learn from our Sangha
That's
friends.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
All
Good
right,
stuff.
friends. Thank you.
Toodaloo. Bye,
Take
Jack. Thank you so much.
care, Daniel. Thank you.